Hi everyone, today we are wrapping up our two-part series called Love Your Neighbor. That's right, love your neighbor. Now as you know, that this love your neighbor is the second greatest commandment of Jesus with regards to how someone who is a Jesus follower is supposed to live, right? But you see, the interesting thing about this is that even if you are not a Jesus follower, right? This idea of loving your neighbor is something that everyone and anyone can relate with. You agree with me? Because you see, we know the power of this idea, right? I mean, just imagine, because when everybody starts to be a good neighbor to everybody, I mean, it has the potential to make our lives and our social lives even much better and more desirable to live together with people and to work together with other people around us, isn't it? Now, you don't believe me? Then imagine yourself. Imagine yourself living with neighbors, people around you, neighbors who are nasty, who are rude, who are inconsiderate, who badmouth you, backstab you. You can just imagine, right? I mean, they have the potential to suck the joy out of your lives, don't they? And perhaps for some of you, for some of us, are experiencing that right now. In your workplace, perhaps in schools, at homes or on the streets, etc. Or even worse still, you could be that person. You could be that neighbor who is sucking the joy out of somebody's life because of the way you are treating them. But of course, the contrary is true as well, isn't it? So here's the point. Irrespective of who we are, what we have done, what we have not done, what we believe or what we don't believe, for as long as we are human beings and we are in the right frame of mind, we all desire, come on, right? We all desire and believe that life would be much better to live by if we are what? Surrounded by good neighbors. That's right, surrounded by good neighbors at our workplace, in schools, in our housing estates, or on the streets, buses, MRTs, and so on. And as we said last week, that the change doesn't begin out there with our neighbors, right? But it begins right here with us. But that's not the problem. The problem is loving our neighbors is almost an impossible thing to do, especially with those neighbors who seem to be unlovable. And that is why this idea of, or commandment of Jesus to love your neighbors, as good as it may sound, has barely made out of the pages of the scriptures into our hearts and into the communities we live and work, unless we shift the way we view and value our neighbors, unless we shift the way we view and value our neighbor as somebody for whom Jesus died, as somebody whom God loves and values with the price of His own Son, Jesus, to the point of death on the cross. Who are the people? Who are the people in the community that perhaps you hate, dislike, or despise? For whatever reason that is. Let me tell you and remind all of us again that whoever they may be, they are no less loved or valued by God. They are before God, in the eyes of God, they are precious and they are priceless, as you are, as I am. So imagine if everybody starts viewing and valuing everybody as somebody for whom Jesus died. Everybody loved and valued by God. I mean, just imagine the change that would come in our lives, in our communities, in the way we treat one another, and the strife that are going around. I mean, just imagine the change that will come, right? But again, as mentioned last week, that's just the first step toward what? Loving our neighbors. It starts with the shift in our perspective. That's correct. But it will only be effective when we are willing to do, listen to this one, it will only be effective when we are willing to do what is required of us to do as a result of that shift in our perspective on how we view and value our neighbors. Let me put it in another way. If you really want to love your neighbor, any neighbor that is, but especially the ones whom you find it difficult or seem impossible to love, then you and I have to do, listen carefully, then you and I have to do the unexpected thing that the unexpected hero did in the story that Jesus told when a self-righteous religious leader asked him this question: who is my neighbor? Now, this story, or rather a parable that Jesus told, is recorded for us by Dr. Luke, who is a historian and a medical doctor in the first century. In his letter to this guy called Theophilus, most likely a high-ranking and influential official in the society during the time of Dr. Luke. And it's found in the New Testament book called Luke, after his name, in chapter 10 from verses 25 to 37. Here is the context of the story or the parable that Jesus told. It says, one day an expert in the religious law stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question: Teacher, what should I do? Tell me, what should I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus replied, what does the law of Moses say? How do you read it? And then the man answered, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your strength, your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Right, Jesus told him, do this and you shall live, And the man wanted to justify his action, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Now, in this parable, Jesus created a situation or a tension, and then he introduces three persons or three characters and what they did with the situation that Jesus created. And here's the situation that Jesus created, all right? And this was also his way of answering the question of who is my neighbor asked by this expert in the law. Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man, this is the tension or this is the situation that Jesus created, all right? A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. So the situation is that a man is in need of help. And if he doesn't receive one, he may die. At this point, Jesus introduces the three persons in the story, one after the other. Now, here's the first one that Jesus introduces, a priest. That's right. And he says a priest happened to be going down the same road, but when he saw the man lying down there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. And then the second guy that he introduced is the temple assistant, who walked over and looked at him, the man who was lying down there, but he also passed by on the other side. Both of them came across the same man lying down, naked and bloodied, right? And perhaps even crying out for help. But both of them had the same response, right? They didn't help. That's right, they didn't help. And we don't know why. We don't know why they didn't help, because Jesus didn't tell us why. Now, come to think of it, Jesus could have done that intentionally. Left the details intentionally so that, you and I can relate with them. And that is this. Let's be honest, right? We all have good reasons for not helping people whenever we see people in need, right? We have come across that, don't you? I have. I'm sure you do as well. You did as well, right? We have all the good reasons for not helping sometimes when there is a need by people around us. Because look, these two men that Jesus introduced, they didn't help, but these two men are considered good people. They are considered good men, For example, understand this, that for a priest, all right, for a priest or a temple assistant to touch someone with blood stains, naked, And who knows, he might die as you try to help along the way, right? And with all these possibilities, they would become ceremonially unclean. And once that happens, what happened? They may even have to be suspended from serving in the temple for a few days or weeks. So you see, they could have a good reason, a valid reason for not being able to help. And anyway, some fellow Jew will surely come along and help him, you see. In other words, this reminds us of a simple truth, and that is this. It is so much easier to simply walk away than to stop by and help. You agree with me? And if you are a Jesus follower like me, he wants us to be bothered by this truth. Question, are you? Are you bothered by the truth that even you as Jesus follower, it's easier for you to walk away than to stop by and help your neighbor, my neighbor? And if we are not bothered by it, we should. Whenever you fail to love your neighbor, Jesus wants you and I to be bothered by it. Why? Because that's the very essence of what it means to be a Christian. Because that's the very essence of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. So you see, if you and I are not bothered by that, which is what? Essential to being a Jesus follower, then what? I really don't have anything to say to us. You know what I mean? But let me say this in this way. We cannot continue to live like that. We cannot continue to live being not bothered by our failure to love our neighbors. If there is one key aspect of our life to improve as a Jesus follower, then it is to love our neighbors. That's right. So you see, the listeners of Jesus' parable at this point should be thinking or asking in their own minds why the priest and the temple assistant didn't help what? Their fellow Jews, their fellow Jew brother. I mean, it's a Jew, How come they didn't help? Who was in dire need of help? And rightly so. They should be bothered, right? The listeners of this parable should be bothered by it, or thinking or asking why. Why they didn't. They should, but they didn't. Then Jesus finally introduced the hero of this story. And that's where the tension becomes even more intensive. The problem is that this was an unexpected hero for his listeners. You know why? Because the hero of this story is none other than a Samaritan. A Samaritan whom the Jews, utterly hate and consider them as the group of people that God despises. Now you can imagine the tension that Jesus is building. You can imagine the tension that is going around his listeners, and especially this expert in the law that Jesus was trying to answer. And this is what Jesus said. And this is where the tension builds even more. Jesus said, "But a despised Samaritan came along. And when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him." That's right. He felt what? Compassion. Now, how is that even possible? Because this man who has been robbed is portrayed as a Jew, right? And this Samaritan knows that the Jews view and look down on the Samaritans as people whom God hated and despised. So how could he feel compassionate towards someone who is a Jew? someone who is very hostile to them, to his group of people, you see, unless he as a Samaritan doesn't just view the Jews as everybody in his community views, right? Otherwise, it is not possible for this Samaritan to help a Jew unless he views the man beyond his Jewish background, unless he views and values the man as a fellow human who is in a dire situation, in dire need of someone's help. You see, that's the power. That's what we have been talking about. That's what we talked about last week, right? That's the power of viewing and valuing everybody as somebody that is of same worth as you by the mere fact that your neighbor is also a human being like you. Such perspective, listen, such perspective, if genuine, will propel us to do what this unexpected hero of the story did. And what did he do? Well, Jesus continues and tells us what he did. Look at this. It says, going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine, and then bandaged him, right? Bandaged all the wounds. And then he put the man on his own donkey, and then he took him to an inn where he took care of him. Not only that, but listen, it says, the next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him what? Take care of this man. I'm going away, but take care of this man. And if his bill runs higher than this, I will pay you the next time I'm here. Imagine. When Jesus finished that part of the story or the parable, imagine the shock and the silence that spread across his listeners, right? Because of this unexpected and unpopular hero who did an unexpected and unimaginable thing. And Jesus, and what? Breaking through that silence, Jesus asked the mother of all questions. And that is this: which among the 3 was a neighbor to this man on the roadside? And the expert in the law who wanted to justify his excuses replied, oh, well, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus said, bingo! Well, no, Jesus didn't say bingo, but he said along that line, okay? Yes. Because Jesus said, yes, right, that's right. You are right. You got it, And then, and then Jesus said something so powerful that I'm telling you, if you and I take it seriously, we will see this idea of Jesus to love our neighbors come off the pages of the scriptures and into our communities. It will no longer be just a cliche or idealistic, but seeing our neighbors, loving neighbors as a lifestyle in our communities can become a reality. And here's what Jesus said and instructed the expert in the law, who asked Jesus the question. And here is, in the same way, here's what Jesus is also saying and instructing us today. And this is what Jesus said. Go. Yes, go and do likewise. Go and do likewise. Go in your life, right? Go about in your life, in your daily life, with the people around you. Go in your life. Do. Don't just say, don't just wish that things are different, but go and do something likewise. What is this likewise? And here, Jesus was mentioning, right, to what the Samaritan man did. So what did he do? What did the Samaritan man do, right? And I think we can summarize it in 6 words. Here it is. He paid for his neighbor's life, right? The Samaritan paid for his neighbor's life. The Samaritan man paid in different forms, right? If you remember the passage, He paid in terms of his time, right? He paid in terms of the risk that he took to be misunderstood, right? He paid in terms of inconvenience that he took. He paid in the form of missing out even his important schedule. He paid in terms of spending additional money which was not in his budget for the trip. Listen, here's what Jesus is teaching us. Loving your neighbor may cost you something. That's right. Loving our neighbor may cost us something. Go and do likewise. But to do the likewise, we must know that it might cost us something. Because, listen, love is expensive, isn't it? Last week I went out to meet my friend. And after the meeting, as I was walking inside the car park, I was suddenly stopped by a lady, and she asked me for my handphone. She explained to me that her handphone battery died and she needed to call her friend. Now, do you know what came to my mind as she asked me this question? You know, whether I can lend him my handphone for her to call? Maybe some of you are guessing. You may be right if you are guessing COVID-19. That's right. I was thinking of COVID-19. I mean, come on. It's like I was like, I don't know who this lady is. I don't know where she has been and with whom. I don't know if she has COVID-19. I mean, come on. She will touch my phone, right? She will put near her face and she's gonna talk. I mean, to be honest, I struggled to give my handphone to her. But in the end, I decided to help her. I lent her my phone, and I was glad I did, despite all the fears that were running through my mind. Here's the point. You must be ready. You must be ready to pay the price for helping or loving your neighbor. And here's the reason why. Here's the reason why. Because if you are not ready to pay, then you are probably not ready to love. That's right. If you are not ready to pay, you are probably not ready to love. That's right. And can I be a bit more direct again and honest with all of you here? If we are not willing and ready to pay the price, whatever that may be, then I think we should just forget the idea of loving our neighbor. And if our communities begin to become an unbearable place to live in, to work with, then we should start blaming the person when the person whom we see when we stand in front of the mirror. And that will be you, that will be me, that will be us, isn't it? Now, having said all that, here is an encouragement for me. And I hope that it is for you as well. One of the blessings and inspirations that I get, all right, being a part of this church, Shalom Baptist Chapel, is to see some brothers and sisters who are practicing this go and do likewise. That's right. And just to mention a handful of them would be something like, or someone like Brother Philip, Brother Lamguan, Brother Chua, Brother Dylan, and others. It's really heartening, really, my dear brothers and those who are practicing go and do likewise. It's really heartening and inspiring to see all of you, how you would just talk to any strangers, right? I mean, it's for some of you so natural. You just strike the conversation and you just make people so happy. You just make some people's day, you know, just any stranger. It's so heartening and it's so inspiring to see how you would readily avail yourself to those who need help. I mean, you may not know, but you may be walking and then you just see someone needing help. You just go and help. So please, my brothers and sisters, please don't give up and don't stop being who you are, a loving neighbor. to everyone and anyone. Don't stop. Don't stop being who you are. A loving neighbor that is you are. Don't stop that, because you can inspire us and you can help us even to come alongside you and love our neighbors as well. If you are a Jesus follower like me, then this instruction, that this command by Jesus to go and do likewise is not an option for us. It is a lifestyle that Jesus was inviting us, not as an option, go and do likewise, love your neighbor, if you can. No, but Jesus was inviting into a lifestyle. Jesus was basically saying that if you are going to be my follower, then go do likewise. This is what you are required to do as my follower. But yes, it can be a costly lifestyle. That's right. And that can be the greatest challenge to loving your neighbor. So here's my encouragement for myself and for you as well. And that is this. Next time, whenever you feel or sense that you cannot love your neighbor because it's too much, it's too costly, it's too much to pay the price, and that you feel that even your neighbor actually doesn't deserve your help or your love, which may be true. But please, my dear friends, just remind yourself that, at that moment, just remind yourself that someone actually paid the cost with his own life to love you, even though you didn't deserve in the first place. And this someone is the one who is telling you and telling me today to go and do likewise, like the Samaritan man did, to love the neighbor. It may cost us something to love our neighbors. That's right. But hey, if you do that, here are 3 possibilities, or here are 3 benefits. Here are 3 blessings that you and I can experience. Number 1, you will improve. You will improve yourself to be a better person. You will improve yourself to be a loving person. Now, when you love others, it doesn't just impact others. You see that? It impacts you as well. At the core of your being, you see, you become the person of what you do. So when you love, you become a loving person. And isn't that what we all want to be? Isn't that what we want others, our neighbors, to be toward us? That's the first one. When you do, even though it costs, the blessing is that you will improve to be a better and a loving person. The second one is this. You will inspire, that's right, you will inspire your neighbor to do likewise to others. Even though it costs you to love your neighbor, when you love your neighbor, you will inspire your neighbor to do likewise to others. And when you have more and more people loving their neighbors in your communities, it becomes what? It becomes much easier and less awkward. That's right. It becomes less awkward when you have more people loving one another. It becomes less awkward. It becomes easier even for other neighbors in your community to do likewise. It's kind of like the ripple effect kind of thing, like monkey see, monkey do. But well, if it is a good thing, then it is a good thing, right? Monkey see, monkey do. If monkeys see good things, and if they do good things, why not? We should do right. And finally, the third blessing, or the third benefit, or the third possibility is this. Even though it costs you, you will impact the communities with stories after stories of people loving their neighbors. And sooner or later, if that happens, sooner or later, these stories become the cornerstone of our communities. So yes, it will or it may cost us something to go and do likewise, as the Samaritan in the story did. However, the benefits, the blessings that we can reap out of loving our neighbors are just too good to miss out. But again, it's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to us. To what extent we want to see this idea of Jesus to love your neighbor come off the pages of the scriptures and then into our communities with its priceless benefits and blessings. And I really hope, and I really pray that you, whether you are a Jesus follower or not, that you will choose to go and do likewise, to love your neighbor by willing to pay a price for a greater and better communities at workplace, and in schools, in our neighborhoods, on our streets, buses, MRTs, everywhere, anywhere. Go and do likewise. And may the Lord open up doors, open up blessings after blessings for yourself and for our communities. So go, let's go and do likewise. Amen. God bless you.